Living and breathing La Vida Boa. Welcome to the Boa Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Demore, alongside Nick Colhay. We're here to have conversations. We're here to tell stories. We're here to help people. We're here to learn, listen, have a good time, and drink from our new decaled cups. Enjoy.
Cheers, Steve. Welcome to the Boa Life Podcast, everyone. I'm your co-host, Nick Colhay. This is episode number 25. Ready to do this, Steve? Let's go. All right.
Yes.
Welcome, Alyson, to our lovely podcast that we're pros at, as you can already see. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
We know each other from a long time ago. We went to school together. But more recently, I was inspired by, as everyone is, we meet people online on social media. So I saw some stuff you were doing with your life, and I was inspired to reach out and see if you wanted to chat with us.
Awesome.
What do you tell everyone what you do or what you've been doing?
Yeah, so I'm a psychotherapist. I own my own practice, Alyson Halas Psychotherapy, and I specialize in trauma. This is weird.
Yeah. But if you specialize in trauma, we're going to need it.
Two words that are scary: psychotherapist and
Okay.
trauma. Let's break it down a little
They
bit.
feel scary to you?
Well, I guess just in general, that's like a scary term.
Wow.
Well,
really?
because psycho, that's kind of a scary
Psycho,
term,
it's
right?
a scary term. So this is all like, this sounds ridiculous, but talking to people who don't like live in my world is kind of new to me. In terms of breaking things down and sharing things in a way that's like kind of understandable to anyone. So even when you say something like that, like psychotherapy and trauma, like I live in this world every day and those are such benign terms to me, but to you, they feel not.
I guess so. I mean, just in general, I look at that word, I hear it, I think, I don't want to say it has a bad connotation to it, but maybe scary because you think of a psycho.
Yeah, no. So I work with all types of people who are suffering with what you might classify as a mental illness with symptoms that are actually interfering with their lives to a significant degree. I also work in terms of coaching with people for people who want to just kind of ground in their lives and feel more confident and in themselves and of themselves so that they can expand and kind of step onto their path of purpose and passion. And that work is really fun. And I also love the trauma work I do because again, it might sound weird to the outside world, but I have fun in my job, like processing trauma with people because I love what I do and it's just a part of me and I get to be myself. And I also use really amazing tools that help us all feel calm and connected. And part of healing through trauma is about feeling safe. So that's a huge part of my job is helping people feel safe and connected to themselves and to others.
I think we all need that, a little more calmness, right?
Yeah, I think nowadays, I think people are more and more open to getting help that they need, which I think is super and important. And I think, the past couple of years have kind of shed light on and exacerbating some of the issues that, we're having as a society, as individuals, only because, the lack of being out there and getting socially involved and getting to, talk about problems with people. I think that, it's more than ever an important time for people like you. And it's great when people like you enjoy what they're doing and are out there and pushing to help because it's sorely needed, especially nowadays. Have you seen a difference in the last 2 years with mental health, with patients, with people in general? Do you think it's something that has gotten worse or it needs to be addressed more, or has it always been there?
I think it's twofold. I think that what has happened is that the coronavirus has created a worldwide situation in which we are collectively experiencing trauma. So however you perceive the coronavirus, there's been a threat to our safety. And that threat to our safety causes symptoms in everybody. Trauma is not just your veteran who comes home with PTSD. Trauma happens in really nuanced forms, and that's where I work a lot in. To be fair, I work in both areas. I work with people who have very complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which can happen from a lifetime of trauma or a very big episode of trauma. But I also work with lots of nuanced forms of trauma in which you might necessarily identify it as a trauma. Like, not everybody identifies living through the coronavirus as a trauma. I do. Not everybody will identify having an early childhood experience with a teacher that called you up in front of the class and made you feel really embarrassed or shameful as a trauma, but I do. I call that trauma because I know that it still lives in our nervous system and still affects you when you get to this podcast table.
Well, that's funny you say that because I think I've mentioned on a podcast before me trembling. My little took us off in like the 7th, 8th grade trying to get up in front of class. And at that time, that was the most traumatic thing a kid at that age could go through.
Yeah.
And you're pretty much saying that people can live with that their whole lives. And they can.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's fun, because if you start looking at that stuff, you can really heal through things you didn't know you needed to heal through, and then come out the other side and be like, damn, that's awesome. And that's the gift of trauma. And if you find it to kind of clear it, you find yourself on the other side of it in a more expansive place and a more joyful place than you realized was even possible.
Yeah. And the loss of a loved one, and, we're all different. We're all different. Some things affect others in greater magnitude than it would someone else. Someone else would be like just another day, and for someone else it could be a life-changing experience. Like you said, in the legal practice, it was always, in case studies, like if someone's affected worse by something, like just because someone's fragile like an egg, mm-hmm. or someone's like steel, there's a difference in how people react to certain stuff. And with trauma, I have to imagine that some people are going to be affected differently, and therefore they need to address things differently. But sometimes you don't even know how trauma affects you. I feel like, and losing, for example, in my experience, losing a parent certainly has had, lifelong effects on me, and discovering that all the time and trying to cope with some of the stuff of the past. It's telltale, it lets me explore myself, and sometimes I get better, sometimes I get worse. So it's I know, is it easy? Is it an art form? How does that unfold in practice to deal with people that are just experiencing so many different things?
I would say it's definitely an art form, but there's science behind it, and there's tools based in science that we use. I mentioned the tapping is one of them. Tapping is a tool. EFT, emotional freedom technique, is a tool that's now based in science that is a trauma release tool. As a trauma therapist, and with all we know about trauma at this point, we've learned that it is really important to have intervention at a body level. So not just like the brain processing level where we think our things through and we talk to ourselves and we know what we need to be doing, or we know what mindset we should be having, but really using our body and coming into our nervous system and learning how to work at the level of your nervous system so that you can come into a place in your body where you're actually meant to be, which is like a place in your resting nervous system where you're calm and you can find aligned action, what you need to be doing, and it's kind of like flowing. So when you get to a place with trauma, you can learn to use those tools to get there and heal in that space.
Yeah, I know before we went live, you were talking about tapping, and I've never actually heard of that. Wait, can you show us what exactly that is? And
my nose is dripping.
No worries. Tis the season for sure.
So yeah, I would love to show you what tapping is. It's so you don't know this about me, but I'm a feelings person. Like, I'm an experienced person. That's the best way I learn. That's how I make decisions. Like, I have to like sit and feel things. So this is how I could explain tapping to you and explain how it works, but I would love for you to just feel how it works and have your own experience of it so you can kind of be curious about it.
Yeah, I love it.
Sign us up.
Yeah.
So you're signed up.
I'm getting nervous already. My hands are getting clear. Like, is this, can I fail at doing this?
No, but you're already answering my first questions. So when I'm working with people, I like to have them check into different places. So one is at like a somatic place, so a sensation place. So just before we start tapping, just kind of notice what your body physically feels like any sensations, like you're feeling maybe some sweaty palms, like
Anything at all?
Yeah, anything at all.
I wish I had a back to my chair.
Okay, so your back, you feel your back?
A little bit.
Okay.
What else you got over there, co-host?
I tend to be an anxious person, so I have the sweaty palms. I'm trying to get comfortable in my own skin, like just relax.
Yeah.
Keep the mind from racing. And I had a spill earlier today on the ice, so my knee kind of hurts.
So you feel your knee?
Yeah, taking that, trying to forget about that. But
Okay. And so that's at the sensation level. Then at the emotion level, do you guys feel any feelings, any emotions you're feeling at the present moment, whether you brought them in here or they've been brought up in our conversation?
I try to, it's interesting when we're having guests on, I try to keep open. So I have a very clear mind and, open to conversation. I want to, be a good listener and try to engage and ask good questions. So I would say I come in here as zen and as calm and as, I try not to be too emotional when we're having guests on. So I would say I'm in a good space right now. The stress of work or family or, none of that is coming into this office with me,
Gotcha.
In here.
You've learned how to kind of.
Yeah. Compartmentalize and enjoy the experience because I love doing this. I love having conversations. I get nervous doing this because I obviously I care about it. I care about what we're doing and the conversations we're having. But other than that, I'm in a good place mentally and spiritually when I'm in here. I'll usually say almost always.
Perfect.
So I feel great.
Okay, cool. And yeah, spiritually, tapping can also kind of align you and help you open to spaces like that. So it's cool too.
I have a little bit of Zen going on that just came on, but more excitement because I like learning new things and I like experiences, and tapping is something I've never done. I just slightly heard about it, but I'm the type that likes to treat my body at the same time as treat my soul or mentally. So for me, definitely excited because after this, I can't wait to pass it on to someone else who's never heard of it.
Yeah. And that's also, I love, we'll get to that part. I actually tap and run at the same time. It's really fun
Perfect
and powerful. Okay. So I'm going to just show you the points first. So you got the karate chop. You got the top of your head. You got your inner eyebrows, side of your eyes. You're not poking your eye out, but you're right there. See me? Under your eyes. Under your nose.
Should we be doing this?
No, you don't have to. I'm just showing you right now. Your chin, your collarbone. It's not your actual collarbone. It's under your collarbone. And I'll guide you through it. You don't have to remember. I use the heart space. I just like using my heart energy. It's not an official tapping point, but it's one I use with everyone. Under your arm. Top of your hand in between your pinky knuckle and your ring finger knuckle. Yep. There you go. You got it. And, oops, sorry, Mike. And then back to the side of your hand. All right.
So all upper body.
Yes. Yep. All upper body. So all we're going to do is you're going to do it with me.
Yep.
So I love to incorporate breath work into tapping because I feel like it kind of accelerates your calming and expansion because it does. If breath freaks you out or it's not comfortable to you, you don't have to use it. A lot of people are uncomfortable with their breath. What?
I love breathing
I love breathing
techniques.
too. Box breathing, Wim
Yep.
Hof. I do.
That's awesome.
When-
Yeah,
when
there are people that being in the flow of their breath is actually triggering. So yeah, so just take a deep breath in. I'm gonna close my eyes because I like to close my eyes. You don't have to. Deep breath in through your nose. You want to draw that breath in through your nose while tapping on the karate chop, and release out. You're gonna come to the top of your head, breathing in, and releasing out. Your inner eyebrow, use one or both hands, allowing yourself to draw the breath in through your nose as low as it'll go into your body without forcing it, and release it out through your mouth or nose. Side of your eye or eyes, breathing in and releasing out. Under your eye, breathing in, releasing out. Under your nose, drawing that breath in, releasing it out. Your chin, breath in and out. Underneath your collarbone. Yep, allowing yourself to find your own flow to your breath. Maybe even notice the tapping, the pace of your tapping, or you want to speed it up or slow it down. Tapping around your heart space. Never forcing your breath, but observing it. Continuing to allow your breath to draw you deeper into your body, tuning into your body.
How have I never heard of this?
Under your arm. Top of your hand, in between that pinky knuckle and the ring finger knuckle.
Can it be either hand too? Or?
Yep, either hand, doesn't matter. And back to cry chop. So there are various forms of tapping. This is just tapping and breathing, tapping and grounding. But just kind of take note of yourself again. Take note of your sensations in your body. Maybe I often like to either stretch my arms to release the physical tension or breathe into them. And just let yourself rest with your body for a moment. Notice those sensations, notice those emotions, notice your thought process. And just see if anything shifted. Sometimes you'll feel more when you didn't feel before. Sometimes things will settle down. Just notice. Is there anything you can observe in yourself that has shifted?
I definitely got calmer. You know, at first I was worried about the pace or the pressure of the tap-in, and then I made myself relax and realized quickly that wasn't probably as important as the actual tap-in itself. But being the first time doing it, I had to kind of keep an eye and ears open, but definitely calmer.
Yeah. I was going like, am I doing this right? I had like questions I want to ask, and then you're wondering, should I be interrupting? But the experience was enjoyable. It was to me, it felt like almost like, you know, a better version of meditating. It's like I was present. I wasn't thinking of anything except what we were doing.
Yeah.
And if I actually knew what I was doing instead of learning it from you for the first time, because I've never even heard of this, I probably would have had a better experience doing it. And I think when I do it again, not if, because I like the way it felt, I think it will be a little different.
Yeah, I think the description of it being a type of meditation, that's, for me, it's easier. I know you guys were laughing about the breath comment, but I used to be somebody that felt really uncomfortable in my breath. As a little kid, that's how my anxiety would present. My breath would get really constricted to the point that people thought I had asthma. So when I was, pregnant and gonna give birth, and I was taking a class where I mentioned I did hypnobirthing, and they're trying to teach you like how to breathe, and I'd be like, I cannot do this, the freaking breathing, like the 5 seconds in and the 7 seconds out, and like there's a lot of constriction for me around breath. So tapping was like my way in. It was my way in. There are people that can sit down and meditate and it's their thing. Not everybody can do that, especially people who have a history of trauma or experiencing any sort of mental health symptoms. It can be really scary to sit with yourself in complete silence, just sitting there with whatever's going on in your body and your mind. So what tapping is doing, although a lot of people describe it as that act of kind of like giving you something to focus on and distracting yourself, it is doing that in a way because it does give you something, that singular focus, which also helps in meditation. If you focus on like one thing, that's a type of meditation. But when you're tapping, it's actually, you're hitting on acupressure points that are sending signals from your body into your mind that are saying, we're safe. Everything's okay. It's okay to be calm. It's okay not to be in your stress response. And that is one of my biggest messages to everyone, would be that at this point in time, we all need to invest in learning tools that regulate our stress response. Because we're all walking around like that, but we don't really recognize it because we've been walking around like that for so long. So tapping is a tool amongst many other tools. It's not the only tool, but it's a really easily accessible tool that helps you calm your stress and regulate your physiology, because it's your body that creates stress. It's perceiving stress from your environment and creates physiological stress in your body.
Are there any, it's going to seem like a general term, but are there any rules to tapping? And by that, I mean, you mentioned specific spots. We obviously hit on very specific points. Yeah. Is there science behind those exact spots?
So those exact spots have been pared down from a larger science in which there's all sorts of spots all over your body. I'm really bad with history and remembering all these facts, so I will own that. But the general idea is that there was one particular science that did all these spots on our body and had specific protocols to match specific things. If you had a phobia of this, you did this protocol. If you were feeling depressed, you did this protocol. Tapping has taken the major points on your body that can kind of take care of everything. So what can you tap for? You can literally anything and everything. You can tap for depression. You can tap for anxiety. You can tap to take care of PTSD. There are studies that do tapping around physical pain, around your knee, around expansion and, growing in your life, parenting issues. It can be anything you can apply tapping to. Especially, the kind of tapping we just did is really just to regulate your physiology and kind of bring you a notch down, but there's different forms of tapping.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like how it made me present, calmed me down. Do you see a lot of trauma affecting how people are in terms of anger, and does this help regulate stuff like that?
Yeah.
Controlling anger and emotions and.
Yeah, because anger is, have you heard of fight, flight, freeze?
Right.
So anger often, if you're stuck in anger, it's because you're in your fight response, which is a form of your stress response, which means that your nervous system needs to be re-regulated. It means that you're tweaked out and that If you're stuck like that, it just means that your fight response is stuck on. And using a tool like this will help you calm. Tapping doesn't make feelings go away, but it makes them manageable. It, like, if they're valid feelings that are based in this reality here and not in the past or a past trauma, it will help calm and contain the emotion you're experiencing, so it's not so overwhelming that it's causing you to fight someone or yell at someone or maybe get in a fight with your partner. But you'll instead be able to hold the emotion and see the truth of it, like what's really happening here, and help you take aligned action that will bring you into solution in your life.
Nice.
How do you find patients? Do they all the time? They just find you. Do you, okay, so a patient finds you. Uh-huh. It's obviously,
I mean, I have,
a huge,
I'm like advertised, I guess. Like, I have a psychology
I'm just always
today.
we've had a couple doctors on in different areas of medicine, and this being one of them. And I'm always curious, how do people that go through trauma that need help?
Yeah.
How do they actually step up and, dial your number?
So it's a really interesting question, and I have a really particular set of beliefs on that. People find me when they're ready to find me and they need to find me. What I do is really unique work, and I do it well. And I don't say that from a pompous place. I say that from a place of really deep learning and empathy and life lessons, and a lot of hard work. And I love what I do. And I believe that I was brought here to help people through stuff like this. And I just feel like people who are meant to connect to me. Like, you called me and I was like, okay, that was easy.
Easy as that.
And so hopefully this will be one of those things, because I didn't seek you out. I wasn't like, oh my God, I gotta get myself on a podcast. Even though my practice manager was like, oh my God, we got to get you on a podcast. And I was like, I don't know.
Wait, that was before?
That was before. And then you called me and I was like, okay.
Speaking into existence.
I'm going to get myself on a podcast. So hopefully, like, someone will be listening to this and be like, oh, wow, that connects to me.
Well, I guess that was kind of my point
Yeah.
to make, is that, we're so wound up like you described. How do people, what kind of quick advice can you give someone that wants to get out and seek help, that is really, a little too afraid still?
Yeah. So, well, one, there are a lot of great tapping resources online. That tapping is an amazing tool because you don't actually need a therapist to do it with. You can do it on your own. You can do it with a video. Is it great to be able to do it with somebody that can guide you through it? Yeah, of course. But the quick advice I have right now is don't give up. Like, if you are looking for a therapist and you need treatment right now, unfortunately, there's such a lack of people who can provide services because we're all overbooked. I just hired 2 new clinicians so that I can start servicing more people. But yeah, I would say if you're not ready to start online, and also Psychology Today is a great resource. That's the only place that I do advertise. It has a little blurb about me and my picture. And most people at this point come to me because they know somebody else who has come to me. It's kind of like word of mouth, or a doctor has referred them to me. But there still are people who will go on my Psychology Today site and be like, I really connected to your words, or I saw your picture and I just felt that you would be the right one. So yeah.
Yeah, people got to be ready for that kind of help. And
Yes.
we always talk about this podcast. If it helps one person, then it was worth doing, right?
Absolutely.
And it's we keep hearing these redundant stories of, how you got here or why you came here and or why we did this and how it helps. And, all these positive things that we know are helping other people. But yeah, one person watches the show, they like what they hear. This is someone I could relate to. We'll make sure that we provide contact information when we do the upload, so that if anybody wants to reach out, they can. That's what we're trying to do. We're all here to better ourselves, to help better other people. And we all have stuff we've got to deal with in our lives. And sometimes just talking about it and getting perspective is enough. And sometimes you need more than that. Yeah. In undertaking this journey, even prior to that, Nick and I are always about trying to self-improve, read, fitness. And while you're doing that exercise, it just confirms to me that, we're on the right path. We're looking for tools. We're looking for experiences, conversations that'll help us and help other people. And this was a prime example of something that someone could watch and be like, wow, I'm going to try that. I'm going to look into it. Will that work for me? And that's what this is all about. And in the journey of self-improvement, I feel like sometimes you're taking 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. As I've tried to develop myself emotionally and spiritually, I feel like sometimes I regress a little bit. Do you find that in patients and in your practice, that as people are trying to heal themselves, that sometimes maybe they open up wounds and make things worse temporarily, or,
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't like to use the word patience, just because I'm there with you. And that's, I think, why people also come to my practice, because I'm just a person on a journey too. I've been through my own stuff, and just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean that I'm this almighty healed person. It just means I have more tools than you.
Right.
Because this is what I went to school for, and this is what I dedicated my life to. But it doesn't mean that I'm, whatever. But
no, but that's kind of it's like Nick saying, or like psychotherapy. It's like there's this misconception,
Yes.
not even. It's just like this feeling that people, especially guys, I mean, if we're being honest, that you start talking about your problems and things that are going wrong, all of a sudden, it's like a big red light goes up, and don't go there. And you're right, like patient or it's like, we're just having a conversation. You're just trying to improve, find tools to be better. And I think we have to find that perspective when we're maybe looking for help, because I think that's probably one of the main reasons why a lot of people don't get help they need, is because they feel like there's something wrong with me. I don't, if I'm going to speak with someone, I'm already guilty of being a failure, or, having something wrong with me. But you're right. Maybe calling someone a patient is not the good.
Yeah, no, because I feel we all need this help. I use this help. I use tapping on myself all the time, throughout my day, in the morning. It's my go-to tool for regulating. But I would like to come back to men. You guys are both here.
We're men. I think we're men.
We're over. I think we're men.
But I think it's really cool, and this is what I mean, nuanced little things that we don't necessarily think about until you talk about them. You just said, I'm a man, and when we start talking about our problems and getting a little more vulnerable with things, right? Alarm bells go off in your head. That's just that's your social conditioning, maybe a little early childhood trauma, or just repeated social conditioning that needs to be held and can be calmed. You can tap on that, and that's another form of tapping. So you tap on you can tap on a feeling, or tap on a problem, or tap on this weird thing you become aware of. Even though every time I try to become more vulnerable with someone, alarm bells go off in my head. And this is where I'm at. So that's the talking tapping, and that's the more traditional tapping you'll see online, is you set it up with an even though statement. Even though blah blah blah, I'm feeling anxious, I want to scream at my partner, I love and accept myself, is the traditional balancing statement. Not everybody can say that. And for some people, I love and accept myself opens up a whole nother door of problems that they're not ready to deal with yet. So you can also just say, this is where I'm at. So you say that 3 times, and then you go through those tapping points again and just say one keyword, alarm bells. being vulnerable. Sets off those alarm bells. Being vulnerable. All those alarm bells. And what you notice is that as you go through a round or two of that, you'll start to gain more insight about yourself. And that's what I love about the tool as well, because as you're calming your body, you're bringing your entire brain and all the resources of your brain back on board. Because when our stress response is activated, parts of our brain shut off and we don't have access to the full capacity of our brain. And we also are disconnected from our intuition and the place you were in before when you said, I can feel that I'm on my path, that I'm in the place, like we're moving in the right direction. When you're regularly regulating your nervous system and using a tool to do that, you can feel those things with much more certainty.
Yeah.
This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
I think what I'm thinking right now is that this is the exact definition of mind-body connection.
Yes.
Because you're using, two parts, physical, mental. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're connecting, you're making them both work at the same time.
Yes.
And both are helping each other.
Yes. Your body's sending signals to your brain, to your amygdala, which is like your alarm center, which is setting off those alarm bells from your body perceiving that there's a threat, when really the threat could be you're smelling a smell you smelt back the day when you got in a huge blowout with your best friend. Like, our bodies are constantly taking in information that our brains are not even aware of, and it can be sending signals up to our brain that say threat, like this is not safe or not safe. So it's really important just to kind of, you're calming your brain.
Coming back to the rules.
Uh-huh.
There pretty much are no rules. How many times you can do it?
The rules. There are general guidelines. So I am someone that intuitively kind of gravitates to wherever I need or want to be in my body or with this tool. But there are rules to get you started, right? So those points, those are the points that you use. You, on the karate chop, you can tap up, you can tap
pressure
down.
As much as you want.
And that's the thing. What you'll find as you tap, like if we did another round or two of just that tapping and breathing, you guys would relax into it and you would be able to feel what you needed. A lot of people will find that, this point works really well for me, or this point feels really uncomfortable, or you might unconsciously just find yourself kind of gravitating to certain points or a certain pace. But it's really, there's no like, you need to apply this much pressure, or, Nick Ortner will tell you need to tap like 5 to 7 times or something, but I've never once counted how many times I'm tapping somewhere. I just do it.
And any time of day, as many times as you want, while you're lying in bed or while you're driving a car.
Yes.
Obviously safety comes into play.
You have to keep your hands on
put the
wheel.
Disclaimer down.
Not while you're driving.
But I do tap when I'm driving. I think it's a great time to tap.
I tap my gear all the time. Like, I find myself,
yes.
Look, most people read their cell phones while they're driving. Let's be real. So this can't be that bad.
We don't advocate for that in the
No, and you're calming your nervous system. So you're really not distracting yourself.
Absolutely.
Like you're really fairly alert if you're tapping and driving. But yeah, maybe not do it. I don't know. I do it. But yes, I love tapping in the morning because it kind of starts me off from a regulated place. And what people also aren't always privy to is we can trigger ourselves with our thoughts. As a mom, as a business owner, as a woman that's got a lot going on, sometimes when I wake up, I'm like, So I got that like to-do list immediately in my head, and that can get me a little stressed out. So if that does happen, I tap to kind of ground and reorient myself. But at this point, it doesn't happen that often anymore because I just use it as a baseline tool, and I use it to kind of open myself up to my day because it's just a good
Seems like a
feeling
nice, easy reset, like
routine,
Yeah.
consistent routine.
Yeah, because
Yes. If you use it consistently in the morning, or if you're somebody that struggles to fall asleep and use it consistently at night, it will be helpful.
One of our main words.
I help you sync, like you said. I was thinking the same thing too. It's like syncing mind, body, soul, spirit, and you don't know your subconscious and how you react to things that you don't even know you're reacting to. But
Exactly.
when you're self-aware and you know yourself and you're honest with yourself and you integrate all these things, like you embody who you are, and then it's like everything else. You get balance in your life. That's the best thing. It's like when we're consistent with our eating and our health and working out, and whether it's breathing or tapping or meditating, it's like people have to find what works for them and then be consistent doing it. I think that's the most important. But how do you stay consistent for yourself?
So the morning time, I also use it. At this point, this is like my favorite point, and it works very quickly for me because I've been using tapping for so long. So I can use this throughout the day. If I recognize that something has triggered me during the day, I'll do a round or two of tapping just to kind of reset myself. But I love your word embody. Tapping that's what it does. It helps you embody yourself, feel yourself in yourself, be aware of yourself. And that's really how I use it in the morning for myself, just to be fully embodied before I start my day.
It seems like maybe that's your go-to. Are there other things you do in concert with that? Like, are you big on exercising, meditating, breathing, I know you breathe while you're tapping too, but are there other things that you try to stay consistent doing that help you?
Absolutely.
Stay regulated?
Yeah. I practice yoga. So that's something I do once a week. I practice with Dave, Yoga Dave, we call him, from Wilder Yoga. He's awesome. And
Shout out
to Dave. And I've recently taken up, well, I wouldn't say recently. I've dabbled in running on and off since my 20s. I randomly ran the Brooklyn Half Marathon when I lived in New York. And then I was like, I'm not doing this ever again.
At least you tried.
I did it. But more recently, and we went to high school together, Candace, 9/11 was one of the major trauma points in my life. And a couple years ago, it was when we had all the that random microburst storm, where there was almost like little tornadoes in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And there was so much damage everywhere, but my house was safe and sound and everything was okay. And I can remember being in my doorway of my basement and looking out at my yard and being like, I know in my head that I'm grateful, but I don't feel grateful. Something feels weird and disconnected to me here. And again, being a conscious person and being aware of yourself, I was like, something's up. And I wasn't yet embodied in gratitude. And what I learned through my own tapping experience as I tapped through that storm was that particular trauma brought me all the way back to 9/11. And I was like, what? How did this happen? But as I was able to come back all the way back to 9/11, I was able to see that I still had a lot of survivor's guilt. I was still holding a lot of guilt for living that was not allowing me to be fully embodied in gratitude. And at that point, I decided I needed to do something that could really support myself in a really deep way. And what came to me was utilizing running with intentionality and tapping as well. And I set the intention. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Tunnel to Towers run in New York City.
Yeah.
So I set the intention to train for that. I don't know, I think it's just a 5K. And it's in honor of Steven Siller, who passed away 9/11. He was a fireman who ran from Brooklyn all the way into the city and then died trying to save people. So I set that intention, and then I set the intention to use my body to release from survivor's guilt. So every morning I would go out for a run, and I would literally like start my run like this and just like repeat. I release from survivor's guilt. I release from survivor's guilt. I'm allowed to live. I release. And as I would kind of put that intention out there, things would come to me that I would need to tap through, memories or certain thought processes that I needed to process through. So I would tap and run, and I would tap and run and tap and run. And then by the end of it, I felt better. So I committed to that whole process, and at the end of it, I knew I had done what I set out to do, which was to give myself permission to fully live and to fully be joyful. And not that ever in my head at that point would I say like, oh, I don't deserve to do this, but my body was still holding on to that. My body was still holding on to a place and space and time in which I couldn't fathom that I could live and she couldn't.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, just let me make sure I understand this fully. For the 20 years or so, you mentioned the bad storm that went around this area, and I remember that. It was like 2 years ago-ish, 3.5 years ago. So from that time, from 9/11 on, do you feel like you were living, did you have like an epiphany about, you mentioned gratitude and that stuff you were feeling? Do you feel that for that whole time you had that deep down inside you that you didn't know?
I always knew I had 9/11 trauma, and I thought I had processed through a lot of it, and I had. But there was still this piece hanging on, which was my survivor's guilt. And I wasn't aware until that storm, when I felt that disconnect between my mind and my body and my heart. I knew in my mind that I was grateful that everything was okay, that my family was okay, that our neighborhood was okay. And I kept saying I'm grateful, and I kept knowing that in my body, I didn't feel at ease, and I didn't feel grateful in my body, and I didn't feel grateful in my heart. And it just felt like contracted. And I was like, I don't know what's happening here. And the epiphany came from when I chose to sit down and tap with myself. And I started with tapping through the storm. And what happens in tapping is, as you start with a present day issue, if it's rooted in a trauma, it'll bring you back there. Your mind will bring you back there, and it'll present to you. So at that point, it was kind of like the epiphany of like, holy crap, like this is what this is about. Yeah. Well, I thought I had done this. I thought I had healed through this. But meanwhile, I'm like sitting sobbing in my family room on the floor, like just tapping alone with myself and being like, yes, this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Why am I here, not her? You can't even control why you feel that way.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you wonder why you can't get past it earlier. Like that something that from like so long ago could come back and revisit. I think it was a blessing that you recognize what it was and that you could work through it and acknowledge it. I found like probably a lot of people have trauma and issues that they probably don't even know what it is. And, even when it resurfaces later on in life, they may be because they've blocked it out or don't even know that it happened. I mean, who knows? The mind is an unbelievable thing. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad or a good way, but that you could forget, things that have happened to you in the past and that will affect you for the rest of your life. Is there a different way in dealing with that when you're finding that people are dealing with traumas of the past? Does it even matter if they can recognize it or not? I mean, in your case, you recognized it, you declared, it was almost like, I know what this is. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I'm going to be thankful for I think maybe what you thought was I'm going to live my life like she would live it if she was in my shoes, and, I'm going to get past this. It's like, you think people that don't necessarily know what's wrong, there's still healing there, right? That you don't necessarily need to figure it out all the time, do you?
No, you don't need to figure it out all the time. And often, if we're open to us, life like brings us people or experiences that help us heal in our own way. Not everybody needs to be in a therapy office to heal through trauma. It's one way to do it, and it can be a really effective way to do it if you have the right tools, but you have to have the right tools. But I believe deeply in life also giving us healing experiences, and if we learn how to listen to our bodies, we can guide ourselves there. Just like we all do this when we're nervous, like this is your body telling you, like, this is how you calm down. But you don't know that you're calming yourself, but you have points in your fingertips that are sending messages to your brain that are saying it's okay to calm down.
Right.
I'm always intrigued how people get into stuff that they're so passionate about.
Yeah.
And we mentioned 9/11 and that being for us like right after high school. So was there a point in your life when you said, you know, this is what I want to dedicate myself to? How did this all come about for you back when you started getting into it and studying it and really finding a passion for it?
Yeah. So helping people, being present to people, like in some way, I knew I wanted to be like a helping professional ever since I was little. Like I always knew that was where I wanted to go. Even I wanted to be a lawyer briefly, but it was always a child advocate lawyer, and I wanted to like stand up for kids. But so I always kind of knew that. And then I went to school and got my undergraduate in psychology, and then I ended up getting my master's in social work. But it wasn't really until I learned how to tap, until I was introduced to my mentor, who I had mentioned to you, Lori Layden. She was brought here by Nick Ortner, who is also somebody that's very big in the tapping world. She was brought here to Newtown. Here is what I mean is Newtown, after Sandy Hook, to help survivors process trauma and hold that space for them. So I was invited into mentorship with her about 7 years ago, but it really wasn't until I learned how to incorporate the body, like you're saying, body, mind, treatment. I used to live in my mind a lot as a kid, as a young adult, as an early therapist, understanding, analyze. I could understand the crap out of you. I could tell you all your stuff, like, but that doesn't mean I can help you. I can understand you. That feels good to me. But it doesn't mean I can help you. And it doesn't mean it helps you either. Yes, insight into yourself can help shift things and soften things and help with compassion and grace for ourselves. But understanding ourselves doesn't necessarily translate into being able to shift out of places that we don't want to be stuck in.
You mentioned mentor in our last podcast. We talked about mentorship and how important it's been for me and how important it was for a past guest. Was the fact that you mentioned it to me alludes to the fact that they were probably instrumental in your career progression. But is that what helped? And I'm speculating here, but is that what helped you to shift from just worried about the mind and knowing that to then using the physical and incorporating that in your practice?
Absolutely. So to finish, the question and answer it in its entirety, yes. That it wasn't until I met Lori and started practicing these techniques and learning how to incorporate my body that I could feel passion. I was somebody at 20 years old that was pissed off. Why does everybody feel passion? Like, why does everybody know that they're passionate about something? I was angry at that time, being like, I know I want to do these things, but I still had that disconnect at that point, and I couldn't feel passion. And it wasn't until I met Lori and was able to utilize these techniques that I really could embody all this passion I had inside of me. It was always inside of me. I just couldn't necessarily always embody it in a like consistent way. I could feel like flashes of it, but I couldn't feel that like alive thing that I feel now that I'm like, yeah, I love this. Like people are like, if you win the lottery, are you gonna still? I was like, yeah, I would still do this. Like I would.
Can't beat that. You're doing something you love. It's not work. You know, that's like how I feel when I'm doing this. If I hit the lotto, same thing. I'd still be showing up here on, Tuesdays to film and talk to someone and get into their head and learn about tapping and improving oneself and dealing with trauma. The the pandemic shifted a lot of things, I'm sure. And the other thing is technology, right? I think that social media and technology is definitely shifting a lot of things, and now with, having children, I know you mentioned you have children and Nick has kids, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers do. And this is such a, random question to ask you, and I'm sorry to, they ask you this, but it's like, what do you think the impact of these things are having on our kids? And do you think that, people like you are going to have to really, come out of the woodwork and help? Because I tend to think that, between the pandemic and all the things that we had to do because of it and because of technology, that our kids are encountering a lot of stuff that I think are going to create some challenges ahead, for them.
What kind of challenges do you feel like it's going to create?
So I feel like kids are going to be a lot more anxious. I think they're a lot more vulnerable, confused, because of dealing with the pandemic and then the social media aspect, the lack of socialization. I think that there's a lot of trauma that a lot of them have been through in the past couple of years, and with the shift in technology that may disrupt them a little bit. I think that, there may be some issues, and what do you think would be helpful for them? Like stuff like tapping and things like that. And do you think the pandemic and technology is something that, parents need to worry about? Or, I know it's a big question, and there's probably no right answer for it, but I do feel like parents and people in general are a little nervous about the effects the last couple of years have had on our kids. So just from your perspective, I'm just wondering if you thought about it. Do you have any, theory, any conclusions, anything at all?
I got no conclusions yet. However, I'm not an advocate for worrying about anything, really. Is there reason to have concern about it? Absolutely. I'm already seeing the effects of those things. I'm already seeing an increase in children seeking services for anxiety, things like that. But I'm a parent just like you. I have concerns about devices and social media and how they're impacting our kids. And I do limit my kids' social media consumption. And I have been really conscious to trying to limit any media consumption that has anything to do about COVID. But at the same time, I'm a real person in a neighborhood where people strike up conversations, and the topic of COVID you can't get away from, and your kids are right there, and it is part of their lives, and it is okay. But I think it's something that we're just going to have to deal with as it comes, and that we can do our best to be conscious to it and do our best to connect with our kids. Like, the thing with social media that I feel the deepest about is just like the disconnect it creates with real people. Like, we're here having a conversation, but we wouldn't have been having it except for social media, because that's how we connected, remained connected. We knew each other in high school, but if social media didn't exist, we probably wouldn't have been able to have this conversation today. So I think there are beautiful things about it that were included in the pandemic, that was a way we could stay connected, but it's about balance. I think everything in life is about balance. And I also always try to bring up the point that balance doesn't just mean things are balanced right now. Sometimes balance means that things are really skewed in one direction for a period of time in your life, and then they get balanced out later down the line. That's my hope.
Well, thank you for answering the question perfectly. When I didn't ask.
He didn't even know what he was asking for.
No, I knew what I was asking. It didn't articulate at all, but you answered it as if I asked the perfect question. So thank you for that, for basically reading my mind on that one. That alleviated a lot of concerns. You're always worried about that. I mean, as parents, we're always second guessing everything we're doing. We're always worried about problems that don't even exist yet. It's like,
Yeah.
and I always try to think, even when you think you're doing the right thing, who knows, sometimes you do the right thing and it's, what is it? Good intentions pave the way to hell. It's like, you think you're doing everything right and all you're doing is, the wrong thing. And sometimes the wrong thing's the right thing. So you got to, I think, live life with a little humility. And I think you're right. I think as things get out of kilter in any aspect of life, sometimes, the scale goes back the other way and it kind of levels itself out. I don't know why I like hearing that perspective from different people. As a parent, I'm always concerned. And you're right. It's like cross that bridge when you get there, figure it all out. We're constantly talking about how this medium, the internet, YouTube, social media, it's a blessing and a curse. And, not even for our kids, but for us in general. I mean, you might get someone that calls you because of, seeing you and you may be helping someone in this venue. So it's, you use it as a tool, I guess, like tapping, right? We do what we can to try to make it a pro and not a con. You in your practice, are you using a lot of technology, or it's not even a tool for you? And
no, I mean, again, talking about the benefits of technology, through COVID, the mental health community has been able to use a lot of telehealth. So I have like Zoom, that's a HIPAA compliant Zoom. So I do a lot of sessions over the computer.
Yeah, we've heard that a lot too. I wonder if does it take anything away from it? Is it like you deal with it and it's the alternative that you have because of, the current state, or is it just as good?
Different people have different opinions, and I think it has to do with how you function as a person. Like I said before, I'm like a feeling person. I often feel people in a room. Like, for me, that's a little harder over a screen, but the benefits of telehealth, seeing clients over Zoom or wherever, is that it's also opening this whole door of access that people who would have never gone to therapy are going to therapy, because it removes barriers, like time management barriers. A lot of us are really busy. And even if we try to be less busy, we're still really busy. And it can be hard to find time to carve out to go to therapy. So when you take the drive in and the drive out of the factor, and you can just turn on your computer and be in your bedroom and your therapist right there, it's really cool. And going back to that safety piece, the initial stages of therapy are all about creating safety. A lot of people do not feel safe enough to just like up and walk into a therapist's office and sit down for the first time and be like, so this is why I'm here. But if you allow people to kind of access that space from a physical space where they already feel comfortable, it can kind of reduce that barrier and allow the process to feel a little, have a little more ease for people who wouldn't necessarily choose to access therapy otherwise.
Yeah, I think the whole telehealth thing that came about, because of COVID is definitely a good thing. And you brought up a lot of good points, and we were forced into it.
Yeah.
I'm in medicine too. And you're right. It doesn't have to be a person seeking a psychotherapist, or it could just be someone who has a cold and a runny nose. Like, at least they're seeking help.
Yeah.
And I think that's a step in the right direction.
Exactly.
And it was a thing before COVID, not too many people knew about it. Like, you could get on video or a phone call with someone and get some help. But now that we're forced into it, it's becoming a thing. I think more people will use it and more people will get help from it.
And insurance will now pay for it.
They will pay for it.
Yes.
Which they should.
Yes, but again, positive things coming from COVID. Before COVID, insurance would not pay for telehealth sessions. So now they do.
That's a whole other topic, right?
Yep.
Insurance is evil. I won't say that because we could have someone in the insurance industry one day on. And then,
You're right. Disclaimer. You're not really that evil.
Oh man. Well, time flies when you're having fun. We don't want to take up too much of your time. We thank you so much for joining us, and I will be tapping, I'm sure, now until the day I go, because I feel like it's going to be a great tool in my kit for regulating and helping me with my anxiety and my stress, and the days will be a lot easier now. Thank you for this conversation, and thank you for your time.
You're so welcome.
So before we go, typically Steve and I like to, we're the BOA life, the good life, and we've heard a lot about you, some great insight, and I'm sure the audience will find it very interesting and helpful. I no doubt a lot of people will be tapping after this. What's your view on the good life? Are you living it?
Yes. And again, that whole embodied experience and perspective, I can live the good life now because I feel myself more. I feel connected to myself more. And when I'm connected to myself and grounded in myself, I can be connected into this moment, and I can be fully present and here with you guys and enjoying this moment. And I can be present to my kid. And am I always present to my kid? No. But I can choose to be there. And yeah, I am living the good life, and it's an awesome place to be.
No doubt about that. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure having you, and we can't wait for you to come back.
Cool. Yeah. Be fun.
Tell everyone real quick where they can find you.
I have a website, AlysonHalas.com. And you can check me out there. I have tapping videos you can view there, and I can send some to you guys if you want to post them. And
we'll be sure to copy all that information on the video, on the podcast. Make sure everyone finds it for you.
Awesome.
So no doubt about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my office is in Danbury.
Danbury, Connecticut, people.
Danbury, Connecticut. Yep. And we offer telehealth sessions, so you don't have to be here.
Check your insurance. They probably cover it.
Don't forget to like, subscribe. Thank you as always for listening, and see you later.
Bye, everyone.